I don't want us to get too far behind. I'll tell you briefly what I've tried to do in this paper is to write down the decision rules behind Wilkinson's thinking, okay? And he's been helping me, but sort of doing it his own way, so I'm not quite sure whether I did that or not. And since I didn't know for sure what he was doing, what I guessed, okay? But it's kind of the idea is to formalize in part what he has been doing these many years. And by the way, we need to download his entire brain. We can possibly do that. Is there any way we can do this? Like just do a data dump from Wilkinson's brain? Work on this, okay? This is Gunder Frank. He's the hidden imam here, okay? Gunder got us going on all this by saying that there was one big world system, but he wasn't really talking about everything. There was a world system that started in Mesopotamia and then spread out. It didn't include the Americas until 1492. But this raises the issue of, since everybody's connected to their neighbors all the way back, whatever that means, you have a global Earth-wide network wherever the humans are. I start out with a discussion about systems within systems. I'm talking about human interaction systems, which is not all systems. So human interaction systems are part of larger systems. There's just no way we can get out of this, okay? But what I'm focusing on is the human part, the interactions among the humans. There's a whole bunch of, the humans are interacting with other forms of life and with nature and all this stuff, which is a much bigger issue. But defining the issue of systemness based on human interaction, and then trying to bound it, basically the same problem that Bob was talking about, except that, as he mentioned, the method that we have developed comes from a different premise. It says, look, it might be possible, and Bob is working on a way where if you had all the information about all the interactions, you could identify subsystems essentially and group them. And that's the problem that he's working on. I think you're going to have a revised version of your paper for us, right? Sometime, and we'll put it up. I've read his paper, so I thought about it, and he's been working on a revision. If you don't put the revision, if you don't give us the revision, we can put up the original paper. It pretty much covers what you said and would be helpful for people to be able to see it. It's a different approach. It's kind of from above. My approach is, this is unlike me, but it's sort of from below. It's saying start in a particular place, and then the question is, what is the system from the point of view of this place? We call this place-centricity, okay? And it uses some ideas that come from archaeologists about fall off. Because what you want to call a system is those things that are impacting social change and social reproduction at this place. And I got this language from this guy, from Friedman, okay? Books that he wrote a long time ago. He probably forgot he wrote those books. It's what the system is, the things that either affect reproduction or social change in this place, okay? And then the problem is that there's different kinds of things that impact on social change in this place, and those things, when you go back in time, have different spatial scales, so you have to look at different kinds of interaction and consider it's important which kind you are. But the basic question is this: what are things that are happening, events out there that are impacting what's going on here, okay? And Wilkinson's focusing on political military, on power. He made that very clear in his talk, okay? And power is important for all human societies, including hunter-gatherer bands. They're interacting with the neighbors that they meet, okay, when they're cruising around. And they're competing for scarce resources, and so power is, there's a geopolitics of hunter-gatherer nomadic bands, okay? They already have a state system, except they don't have states. They have bands. But the band is the polity, and they're competing for water holes and access to game and so on. Sometimes it's cooperative, sometimes it's not. So there's a international relations of hunter-gatherer bands here, and you can ask the same question, sort of how does that work geographically and temporally, and how does that change? Wilkinson uses a high bar, okay? It's very systemic, it's not a little systemic. And we try to follow that generally, but we're using his logic, and then we're looking at some other things that he doesn't usually talk about. All systems are getting their food, okay? And the other raw materials that everybody needs just to live. That comprises a network, and that network isn't very big compared to the other networks. It's small. We call it the bulk goods network, but it's a network. And it's systemic. If you don't get your food, you're done. So who are you getting your food from? Are you getting it yourself? You're getting it with the rest of your family. You're getting it with your people in your village. Your village is sometimes exchanging food with some other villages, and so on. You can map that network, okay? All you got to know is where the food came from. Then we think that the bulk goods network is usually smaller than the political military network. There could be exceptions to that, but the whole thing here is sort of presuming a corpus in which we're looking at the average case, and the average case is the scope that has already been discussed here, that Turgeon said. We're thinking about the Paleolithic, actually, and the Neolithic, and what's happening now. Okay, so that's the focus of it. And then we're trying to make some rules that we can use and be consistent with for all of these different cases, and that's a big challenge. Okay, what I've done in this paper is write the rules. There are 4 sections in red and large font, which are my attempt to formulate the rules. We've already gotten some feedback from our project here and from some other people, but I need feedback from you. Is this plausible? Okay, I'm not going to go into the details about them. We have 4 networks. One question is, okay, bulk goods network is always systemic. If you don't get your food, you're done. Power network is always systemic, okay, totally important. About security and territory and all that stuff, all human societies have to deal with that. It's always systemic. Then there's a larger network that we call the prestige goods network. I'm not showing my slides because I don't have time. Okay. The prestige goods network, maybe I do have there it is, yes. The prestige goods network is usually bigger. This is high value stuff that travels a long way, and when you study small scale societies, there's a lot of indirect connections, but you have to allow for that if something really important is coming from a long way, okay? And then there's something that Teresa Neal has been working on, and that she's going to talk about later, the information communications network. There's flows of information going on, okay? And it's big too, but is it bigger than prestige goods network? All kind of questions like that. What I've tried to do is make 4 decision rules for each of these networks that are as similar as they can be, given that it's different kinds of interaction. Okay, political military interaction is a particular kind. Wilkinson explained that. Okay, there's several different kinds of important interaction are going on. Versions of cooperation and competition and conflicts, basically. And institutions are important in all that. So there's no way to ignore all that. But what we want to do is have some simple rules for bounding political, military, international systems, as the IR people call it, okay? And I've tried to formulate that using the high bar idea, but I had to make compromises with it. Because the highest bar idea is direct connections only, okay? But the problem with that is it doesn't really work for what we want to do. You have to allow some indirect connections, but we try to allow as few as possible. So the place-centricity thing is, what we're really interested in is state systems, and state systems, as he does power configuration. They're structured in different ways. Sometimes they're more centralized, sometimes they're more decentralized, all that. And it matters for this problem about when systems expand, as he said. we allow, what I say is, look, place centricity means 5 polities. There's one here, and there's 4 around it, and let's call that the place we're starting from, okay? And then, when does that system expand, or when does this system and that system connect? What he said was, you look for cities the settlements that are in between and that are connecting them. But to be consistent with the idea of power, you want to look at power actions, okay? You want to look at warfare and diplomacy and all those things. So but we know from instances like he talked about, and especially this issue that Gene Anderson is writing about, when did the Egyptian system connect with the Mesopotamian system, okay? All the states in the Mesopotamian system didn't connect with all the states in the Egyptian system. A few of them did. So we have to allow for indirect connections there, okay? And then we add one more in order to get both systems. We say 1 degree of separation. This is network talk, okay? It means 1 indirect connection. So and then you stop, boom. This is the high bar. You could, since everybody's connected to everybody else, it could go infinitely, but we don't do that. We just go 1 indirect link out, and that allows us to have the states of the Mesopotamian system and the states of the Egyptian system merge, kind of when Wilkinson says it does, okay? Then we use that similar approach to the other networks, but it doesn't always work. The prestige grid system, it doesn't work, because there's something called down-the-line trade, okay? Down-the-line trade is really important in prestige grid systems. In a lot of systems, there's no merchants that go from point A to point B. It's the stuff moves from group to group to group. But the way we handle that is, if it's a large percentage of the prestige goods that are important for this, thank you, for this